pull on this ring.
Halo's universe is a place of grand architecture and ancient conflict. Forerunners, humans, prophets, Sangheili, all of them, convinced they had a place in a cosmic hierarchy. But then, something arrived that didn't care. Something new, but ancient at the same time. You see, the Flood isn't introduced in Halo through lore dumps or exposition or any kind of outside media. No. Halo lets you experience the same confusion that the characters felt. Marines disappear. Radio signals are scrambled, okay? There's blood, but there's no bodies. You hear skittering somewhere in the walls. Something small. It's fast, it's sleek, it's agile. After that, you soon find the helmet cam of Private Jenkins. The footage is shaky, it's close, it's claustrophobic, it's different. A squad of confident soldiers slowly falling apart, losing to something the moment the first Flood form slams into the armor of the Marines. The tone of the entire game just shifts. Something's different now. You see, Halo at this point has stopped becoming a sci-fi adventure. Now this is a story of survival. See, this is no longer a war. This is a collapse. You'd be forgiven to just assume that the Flood are merely mindless zombies walking around the ancient corridors of Installation 04, however, it's simply not the case. To truly understand what the Flood are, how they operate, we need to go back. Very far back. Back before even the Halo arrays were constructed. That's right, we need to talk about the Precursors. The Precursors were a civilization so ancient that time hardly remembers them. They ascended to near godhood, however, you also would once again be forgiven to assume that they were gods with the level of technology and intellect that they possessed. Think less gods and more simply seeders of life. They were truly omnipotent. They would seed worlds and simply move on. Not destroy, not cleanse, not reset, simply to uplift life. Before they intended to leave the galaxy, they would leave one species with the mantle of responsibility to take the place of the Precursors. The Precursors had made a decision. Ancient humanity was to uphold the mantle of responsibility and take the place of the Precursors, seeding life and upholding their values throughout the galaxy. However, once the Forerunners had realized that they would not be given the mantle of responsibility after assuming the favor of the Precursors, they in turn rebelled, and so began a great war between the Precursors and the Forerunners. What was left of the Precursors, in an attempt to save their species, reverted themselves back to a primordial space dust form, with the intention to drift to a new galaxy and start anew. However, through time and with unknown intervention, this dust became corrupted, became something far worse, something far more terrifying than anyone could ever imagine. You see, the Flood are not merely just a monster. No, they are the last echo of a now betrayed species. They are a memory, but this memory felt pain, it felt dread, and it grew. And when it grew, so did its hunger. And that's where the real fear is. The Flood's ever-consuming hunger. Every host absorbed, it becomes more aware. It gets smarter, more ancient. It takes the memories of everything it's absorbed. It rips them from you. It takes them forcefully. This is not a consensual, symbiotic relationship. When you are taken by the flood, it rips you from your own self. It rips your memories from you. It takes your soul. Everything you were is now a part of everything the flood is. Now, ancient humanity would discover the dust while exploring deep space. Something they discovered was they can feed their domesticated fauna the dust. Humanity would find that mutations would occur on this fauna, which they deemed aesthetically pleasing. Unfortunately for humanity, once the mutations began to evolve and mutate into something different, it was too late. Humanity began cleansing their worlds after the first flood forms emerged. Realizing what they were dealing with, humanity was now on the run. They were fleeing from the flood now. Their own hubris manifested. This forced a great rapid expansion for humanity in an effort to evade the flood, thinking they could outrun it. However, in monitoring this, the Forerunners saw this rapid expansion as an act of war against them in Forerunner space. This would eventually lead to a war against humanity in the Great Human Forerunner War. It should be noted that for a time humanity created a gene that could suppress the flood. However, this gene meant nothing as the flood grew too rapidly. Like a great cosmic cancer, the flood would come back. The flood grew and grew, and it spread its influence throughout the galaxy. After the Forerunners dealt with ancient humanity in their own grotesque ways, they turned their eyes on the flood, realizing the threat that it was, and began researching ways to combat it. However, they quickly realized the only true way to get rid of the flood was not to eradicate it inherently, but its food source. Thus began the construction of the halo arrays and the eventual collection of species and firing of the halo arrays, leading us into the eventual events of Halo Combat Evolved. Before we explain the flood and the events of the Halo franchise, I believe it's important that we cover the various different forms and or what you could call stages of the flood. You see, the flood are grotesque, but that's not even the horror of the flood. No, it's not how they look or how they attack. No. Or even how they shamble. No. It's how the flood will take your identity. It'll take your autonomy. It'll take every bit of you that is you and assimilate it into what it considers the greater. Simplified things, typically the first flood form encountered is an infection form, a small parasitoid organism designed only to infect anything it encounters, any bioorganic, sentient life it can find will be infected. Once the infection form infects the host, time is of the essence. You do not have much time. From here on out, you are flood. In and out. You are no longer the species that you once were. You are not who you were. Everything has been ripped from you, taken from you, seeped from you, turned into something different, stored in genetic memory for future use. Typically now, the next infection form will be a combat form. Combat forms as a whole will technically look different depending on the species. However, there is a common, unified blueprint, as it appears, for the combat forms. You can see the similarities between the Sangheili and humans, for example, in their initial combat forms. Truly, the combat forms could be seen as mockeries of the specimens they once were. Human arms bending the wrong way, their own biomass piercing through their armor. What comes out is something different, something disgusting, something terrifying, and something that hates. Even the facial expressions appear to be impossible on the bodies. Now, there are the carrier forms as well. Think of them like tumor-filled balloons, ready to burst at a moment's notice. What makes them terrifying isn't just their look, it's what's inside. You see, inside them are hundreds of parasitoid forms ready to start the process over once again, just spreading and taking everything, because that's all the flood is. It spreads and it takes and it hungers and it eats and it takes and then it spreads. It keeps going. It doesn't stop. It must keep growing. Like tumor cells inside the body, it will not stop until its food source has been drained. But what does it do once all of the food has been accumulated? This is when the flood starts becoming more of a cosmic horror now. You see, all of that genetic memory that I mentioned that was stored in these flood forms, they come together and they form a large biomass. That biomass will then become sentient. And in that is the final stage of the flood. The grave mind. The grave mind is a superorganism. It speaks in riddles, poetry, and in absolute certainty. Where the flood's smaller forms scream, the grave mind whispers. It's smarter. It's more cunning. It will choose when to attack, if it needs to attack. Its voice carries the weight of 10,000, if not more, devoured civilizations, and it talks to you like it already knows exactly how you're going to die. You see, the grave mind, once you've encountered it, it's too late. It has already come up with how that situation will end. It will win. The grave mind is all-knowing. It knows everything. Where there is flood, there is the grave mind. Now, in my opinion, this is when the flood becomes one of the most terrifying concepts in fiction. Because you see, it ascends from a basic organism to something greater, to almost a god. And that is its life cycle, from nothing to everything. Where it comes from does not matter, because by the time it has landed on your planet, the chances are the planet has been lost. There is no hope. It will spread. It knows it's going to spread. It knows what it must do. It can carry itself across the galaxy. So long as the species it has infected is capable of intergalactic travel, like interplanetary travel. It can go between planets, it can go between galaxies. If you can do that, the flood that takes you can now do that. When you initially fight the flood for the first time in Halo Combat Evolved, the goal is not necessarily to win when you encounter the flood. It is more or less to survive your encounter with the flood. Their bodies don't stay down. Your bullets feel like they're doing nothing. You may as well have a water gun. Even the enemies you killed earlier have come back, but now they're mangled and distorted and screaming at you, making guttural noises. They are attacking you now for a different reason. It's more than just hate now, it's hunger. The flood changes the way you move, the way you hide, even how you breathe at times. The music will change as well. What were once melodies have now been replaced with discordant chanting, screaming, and wails, giving it a completely different vibe than before. See, Bungie didn't design an enemy here. No. They designed more than that. They designed an emotion to feel. And that emotion? Dread. The Flood are introduced as more a force of nature then they are an enemy. Obviously, they are an enemy and they are meant to be treated as such, but when you look at it from an outside perspective and put yourself outside of what you're playing and look at it, really that's what it is. It is a force of nature. And the most you can do is hold it off, but winning seems impossible. In Halo Combat Evolved, the Flood were seen as a terrifying force, but in Halo 2, they would evolve into something different. You see, Halo 2 would do more than just flesh out the Flood. It would give them a voice. When we first encounter the Gravemind in Halo 2, it is seen to be something of an impossible scale. We do not see the full scale of the Gravemind in this game. We don't. It is just assumed to be a giant, impossibly sized creature made of pure biomass. It shows off its disgusting, fleshy tentacles by coiling them around the Master Chief and the Arbiter. And then it speaks. Not with malice, and not even with rage. It's calm, it's neutral, it's certain. And just like that, a philosophical nature has now been added to the Flood. The existence is no longer just some kind of biological terror spreading throughout the galaxy. No, it's more now. It seems more of a judgment, a greater calling to end us. You see now, the Flood has become the galaxy's reckoning. It is a reminder of every arrogance, every war, every civilization that thought itself eternal, infinite, forever. In Halo 2, we see a very unique dynamic, that being the Flood and humanity having the same goal, end the Great Journey, as the Great Journey would require the Halo arrays to be fired, ending all sentient life in the galaxy, and in turn, taking away the Flood's food supply. Truly, that is what is motivating the Gravemind. He needs the food. It needs the food. Whatever it is, needs to keep feeding so we can leave this galaxy and spread. By the events of Halo 3, the Flood is almost everywhere. It's on ships, planets, it's creeping across the great arc like mold on a dying world. There's a moment players never forget, though. You're walking through High Charity, searching for Cortana, and the Gravemind begins speaking to you again like in Halo 2, distorting the screen, corrupting you almost. You see one of the remains of the greatest Covenant cities, now reshaped into a pulsing, fleshy, cysty nest. Its size unmatched. This is what the Flood truly represent. The collapse of civilization. Not dramatic, not explosive, but slow, fungal, and inevitable. Then, almost in a biblical twist, the Flood proposes an alliance. Obviously, this is a trap, but it proposes peace in exchange for survival. Now, obviously, like I said, this is a trap. The Flood needs to eat to survive. It needs to consume. It needs to grow. That is its weakness. It needs to keep growing or it will die. One could see this as the Gravemind getting desperate, but truly it's a necessity to work with humanity in an attempt to survive in the long run. Obviously, by the end of the game, the only solution is the destruction of a new Halo ring, a complete reset, a cleansing, a fire that is large enough to cauterize a wound on a cosmic scale. By the end of Halo 3, the Flood isn't defeated. Not really, no. You see, it's only contained. You can only contain the Flood. really. They're always there. They need to grow. You need to contain it. For a sci-fi shooter franchise from the 2000s, The Flood actually asks some pretty interesting big questions. What does it mean to be alive if your thoughts can be stolen? What does it mean to be a civilization if it eventually ends? What does victory look like when the enemy cannot truly die? The Flood is not a villain. They are merely entropy manifest. They are a force of nature that cannot be stopped. They are a slow gravitational pull towards the end of all things. Now, I've been saving this for the very end, and I'm sure some of you may have already typed a comment before the video ended, because it's a pretty big thing I have glossed over. But in my opinion, the scariest thing about the Flood is that even if you end it all, it can still take your body and it can still take you. Even in death, you are not truly safe from the Flood. You can still be desecrated and have everything that was you ripped from you. It doesn't matter if you tried to go out on your own terms. Nothing like that matters to the Flood. Even in death, you are not safe. And in my honest opinion, that's pretty fucking brutal. In my opinion, the Flood are, at the very least, a very good representation of cosmic horror in modern media. I believe that there is much to be explored with them still. I believe that what they represent and what it represents as a whole can be explored further. There is so much that Halo can do with it. I think that is really everything I have to say today on the Flood. If you'd like to see more in-depth videos on the Flood, highlighting certain games or moments or sections in games, please comment down below. I have many ideas for this channel, many more videos I will create. This isn't the end. I understand that this may not be seen as the most in-depth look at the Flood. It was not meant to be. If anything, it was just justification for me seeing them as a cosmic horror-like entity, and why I believe that they should fit into the grander, zeitgeist of cosmic horror things. I want people to mention the Flood when they think of it, and not just maybe H.P. Lovecraft or even Junji Ito now with some of his cosmic horror stories. I believe that is where we are going to end the video today. Now, if you would like me to cover a specific topic or franchise, what have you, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm a pretty nerdy guy, Obviously, if I'm taking time out of my days to make lore videos, here we are. Now, I do plan on doing more like some live streams, maybe me playing some games or something. I would love to chat with you guys, so please let me know down in the comments below what you'd like to see on this channel. With that, I am Maple Lore. Take care. Have a wonderful, fantastic day wherever you are, or night or morning, whatever. Bye-bye now.